Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the RPM podcast. This evening, I'm joined by, of course, Sam Ballard Jr., Josh Matthews, and joining us today on what I would like to say a somber occasion, but hopefully we will have him on for much bigger and better reasons. 2017 factory stock champion at Wall Stadium Speedway, Scott Riggleman. For our national listeners who may not be familiar with the format that we are presenting to you today, obviously no introduction, and it's a little bit of a somber tone as all of us have gone through a rather traumatic racing weekend, particularly the four of us that will be presenting the podcast to you this evening. All of us are reeling with the loss or the sudden loss of the promoter and pretty much the heart behind Wall Stadium Speedway, a track that allowed all of us the opportunity to stay connected to the racing world over the last few seasons. Cliff Krause, who passed away this past Saturday after the effects of a heart attack, which he suffered last week. For all of us, it's been a very difficult week. Steve Eccles was able to orchestrate a candlelight vigil at the Speedway on Monday night. That was on January 29th, where many of us were able to attend. And it will also be a mass upcoming this Thursday, which will be, I believe, February 1st at 5 p.m. in Howell. And those details and information are posted wherever you may be able to need to find it on Facebook or on the Wall Stadium Speedway message board. With that, we felt that it was proper to open up the show in the fashion in which we are, and to just kind of collect or reflect, I should say, on a man who impacted all of us, not only by allowing us the opportunity to compete or partake in activities at the 1/3 mile oval, which we all call home, but he was also a close friend to all of us. And it's been a very tough loss for us to deal with. And of course, our heart, thoughts, and prayers all belong to his wife, Diane, his daughter, Emily, and his son, Andrew, in this difficult time. And we thought it would only be proper to open up the show by remembering Cliff for all the wonderful things that he has done. On a personal level, for me, he gave me my first opportunity at announcing and talking about motorsports, something which I will cherish for a lifetime. But more so the fact that I remember the long talks that I would have with Cliff about life and racing and things outside of my responsibilities and duties at Wall. And they're all things that I will take with me forever. And I'm happy to say that I consider Cliff to be a friend of mine. And that's something that will never change on a personal level. And it's what's made the last few days so tough. And that's why we thought it would be appropriate to bring Scott Riggleman on with us. And Scott, I know that you joined us at Motorsports, and we absolutely loved and adored your insights. And we hate the set of circumstances that we ask you to come back on. But you, too, have had a very long-lasting relationship with Cliff Krause for quite some time. And I know it may be hard, but I just want to open up the floor to you and say whatever may be on your mind, as I know you too have been hurting over this difficult past couple of days that we've all been sharing. And man, Cliff, you've been competing at Wall for so long. Of course, your father Sam has been involved in a racetrack for quite some time, and Cliff just seemed to have a special knack at making that place feel more of a home than it ever had before.
Yeah, I mean, when Cliff was there on a Saturday night, he was definitely there, even though, he had a lot invested there. He was definitely there to unwind and relax a little bit and enjoy the races. I mean, his normal business was Supreme Manufacturer, and he said that he was always stressed out there, but he loved coming to the track on a Saturday night, even though he was the guy running the show and everything with his wife, Diane. He was in the pits with us, hanging out, having a good time, talking to everybody. He would get frustrated at officials' calls just like we would. He would complain about rules just like we would, And and I really like where he positioned himself every Saturday night. Every Saturday night before the races start, he was always sitting on his golf cart by where you bought your tires. So he never hid from anybody. He was always available to talk to. And everybody had to go buy tires, before the races start, and he would be sitting there, and you could ask him anything you wanted, and he would answer questions, and he was willing to talk to you about the track. And if you had a complaint, you can bring it up to him. A lot of times he would agree with you too, and he was pretty good with that, with talking to the racers as a racer.
And to me, the most amazing thing that Cliff brought to the table was his, humility, and the fact that, despite Cliff was a very savvy businessman. I mean, his successes outside of the racetrack is something which I hope will be documented in the coming days as we reflect on Cliff's life and legacy, and all the things that he has left in place at Supreme Manufacturing and at Wall Stadium Speedway, and even beyond those two very important assets that Cliff was able to take pride in. but you wouldn't be able to tell if you met Cliff and you had any type of relationship with him. He made it personable, and that was whether you were one of the very successful top tier ranking modified car owners, all the way down to the people that he was able to employ at the track at any level that you could ever imagine. It didn't matter who you were, what your social status was. Cliff found a way to connect with you on whatever level that he saw fit. And it was usually on a level that was as personable and relatable that he could find. And that's one thing that I will take away from the time that I was fortunate to spend with him. And I mean, I'll liken it to something that I said the other night. It's he just had a way with dealing with people, and it wasn't in a salesman type. He genuinely cared for everybody, and it reflected in every facet of life, including at Wall Stadium Speedway. And I mean, Sam, you were only at the track for quite some time, and you got to deal with Cliff on a number of levels, and he essentially was able to see the work that you put into the track. And I know, especially with you being down in North Carolina and not being able to be up here as we've all kind of gathered in this time of mourning, I would imagine this is a tough loss for you as well.
To be frank, and to frankly put it, I wouldn't be down here in North Carolina if it wasn't for the Krause family. They really opened that door, the possibilities of following the dream, whether that be North Carolina or, going to Harvard. The being around the Krause family, especially Cliff, made me a better person. And still, Diane, Andrew, Emily, just a great family to be around, and it's super sad to hear about the loss of Cliff. And you're right, Eric. It is bothering me that I can't be there with my whole racing family. But I know how strong we are. We've endured a lot of losses, and unfortunately, Cliff is gone way too soon. But everything happens for a reason.
Now, for those of you who may not be connected to the social media aspect of this sad news that we've all been accompanied by over the last couple of days, his son, Andrew Krause, who has played a more significant role in Supreme Manufacturing, and also, has been trying to embrace and branch out in his own racing career, did put up a post on social media expressing gratitude towards everybody who has reached out in support on all levels, and also vowing to try to follow in the footsteps of his father and to further be able to exemplify the success that we have seen at Supreme and at Wall Stadium Speedway. And it was something that just brought a tear to your eye. And Josh, I understand that this past year for you on a personal level was tough and in a way triumphant, with what you had to go through in your bout with leukemia. And both Diane and Cliff were there for you on so many levels. And I know that when I saw you in Atlantic City, when the news kind of came down the pipeline, we both kind of were a little bit glassy-eyed over the subject, and for many different reasons. And I just want to give you an opportunity to talk about Cliff as well.
Yeah, honestly, the whole Krause family, I've said it before, that what they do is kind of a thankless job in some aspects. They take a lot of crap from a lot of people, over rules and calls and things like that, and I think unfairly, and really there's so much that I owe to them, directly or indirectly. For example, just after the year that I've had, as you mentioned with the leukemia, the people that I've had to support me has been I've had some friends from before I got into racing, but the racing family and the fundraiser that you and Melanie Lane were all part of, and the people that came out to support me and help me, I wouldn't have that family if it weren't for the Krause family and Cliff for basically bringing the track back to life. I mean, it's truly amazing. They've personally taken me in like family at times. They did the helmet drive at the track for me the one night, and they didn't have to do that by any means, but they knew about me being sick, and they did that just because that's good people. And I didn't get to be particularly close with Cliff, but I remember the first time I met him. It was after my second ever race. I was driving Paul Hartwig's one of his cars for the factory stocks, and I was leaving. It was the end of the night. We were all walking out, and because I didn't tow the car up, I was walking out through the grandstand exit, and Cliff was just hanging out, talking with some people. And I guess he saw that I had the race bag and stuff with me. He goes, "Hi, I'm Cliff. I'm running the play." I'm like, he had this, kind of pride about it, and not in a cocky sense, but a you know, kind of taking care of his baby, the track sense, and he was like proud of it, and that was really cool to see. And on multiple occasions, he said, "I have no idea what I'm doing about running the track," and because you know, yeah, they're a racing family, but they came from the racing side, not the management side, and they jumped in. They didn't gently wade into this pool. They jumped in and got involved, and they've been doing a hell of a job with the track. And I also remember the last time I spoke to him, it was after Turkey Derby. I went up to just say thank you to Cliff and Diane for everything they've done, and regardless of the future of the track, to thank them for enduring everything they have, and to tell them the car counts were great, everything's getting better, and it's just so amazing to see. And Cliff said that I was going to make him cry, and then he looked at me and said, "We'll be around," and he kind of winked, and because I know that they had deals in the works for the extension of the lease on the track, but nothing could be announced yet, or it wasn't finalized. But he was confident in it, and just the smile on his face at that time, and just what a great guy, and to always be around, always be laughing, and with the exception of one time I saw him angry. And that was after a heat race. I think Andrew and Hartwig had gotten together,
Yeah.
and he had some choice words for Hartwig that day, and it was just it was a weird moment, and I'm like, I'm just gonna grab the popcorn and watch, but I mean that was him being a dad, and if you think about it, and he basically bought his kid the best sandbox around, and he invited everyone else to come and play in it. And that's a great dad right there. I think he was just a tremendous father in that aspect, and there's just so much to say, and I don't know exactly what I should say, but he was definitely a great guy, and you never expect it to happen. And it's just very sad to be in this position right now, and just hopefully the rest of the Krause family will be able to heal and somehow stay positive through all this.
Now, one of the things that Josh was fortunate enough to be able to dub at the Matthews Family Studios is we do have another chair that is set up, and that is, in fact, for Cliff. Many of us are familiar with the missing man formation at the racetrack. We are doing something similar. For those of you listening on iTunes, we do, in fact, have a chair in the house for Cliff. Cliff is an avid listener of the RPM podcast. He would tell us every single week that he would pay attention to what we had to say. May have been a fan of a lot of it, may have had a couple things where he offered up some advice, and that's what made Cliff. And again, I don't know how he found the time to even listen to us. The fact that he was able to juggle everything that he was doing, running Supreme Manufacturing, being able to be the overseer of what went on at Wall Stadium Speedway, plus also finding the way to be a loving father to both Andrew and Emily, and a devout husband to his wife, Diane. Cliff found a way to juggle it all, and it's something which I hope to learn from on a personal level. And I can attest to the fact of how hard he worked. And I'll tell you that there's a stereotype amongst those who are successful. And I really wish that Cliff could be the poster child to try to diminish some of these stereotypical attributes that some people pin to those who are able to find themselves fortunate enough to be able to live the lifestyle that Cliff was able to do, because he earned it all. I remember reading something out of a business journal about Supreme and Cliff, and how he basically began his business in his garage using 5-gallon buckets to try to develop his whiskey sour mix and all these other syrups and concoctions he put together, which built himself a business that allowed him the platform to save Wall Stadium Speedway in its entirety. And I want people to know that once he obtained Wall, or was able to work with Diane to be able to get control of that racetrack and do what they had to do with it, the hard work didn't end there. Cliff gave my father an opportunity personally to do some work in his factory. And along with that, he also gave him an opportunity to pick up one of his Ford E350 vans at a very reasonable price. But with that, Cliff didn't leave that factory until 11 p.m., 12 a.m., 1 a.m., and that was before he would head over to the shop that his son Andrew was working on, whatever race car they may have been working on at the time. Factory stock, 4-cylinder. Maybe he was in the sportsman ranks at that time, before Andrew even got into a modified. The hardworking nature of Cliff Krause is something which we all could learn from. Anybody who has to, dread over long hours or a rough schedule or maybe too much responsibility or
being
Cliff,
on time,
Exactly. Cliff just found a way to perfect the process, and you would never know that he was run down or exhausted or tired because he always had a smile on his face, and he was literally happy to see everybody there and everyone supporting, something that we all love collectively.
And to that end, Eric,
And
I want to say that, if you look at that, the whole Krause family, other than I think having some pretty decent cars that they were driving, you wouldn't know that he was essentially a millionaire standing for, because he talked to you on this, very humble person to person level. I mean, the whole family, they didn't flaunt riches or anything like that. I mean, yeah, we know that the business was successful, that he was able to put
I
this
also
track
heard
together.
too when they did buy that nice hauler to do the modified tour with, Cliff did not want that at Wall Stadium. He's like, I don't want to look flashy. And when Andrew and Tom did bring it to the track, Cliff didn't like it there.
Yeah.
He's like, no, let's just use the dually and the other enclosed when we come here. But I guess they finally gave in and just started bringing the big hauler there. You know?
It's just, I mean, it's very, very humble family, I think, and I just have so much respect for all of them, and Cliff for being that type of guy,
And cycling back to the Candlelight Vigil that was held at the track on Monday night, Steve Eccles, who's a longtime Wall Stadium Speedway fan, also runs a couple of Facebook groups that kind of parlay some interest into the track. He really went above and beyond in terms of organizing the event. Also, we got some attention from the Asbury Park Press, who covered the event. There's also a 1 minute and 25-second or so video that summarizes all the people who were there. Estimated about 100 to 150 people on such short notice showed up at the track in the dark, in the cold, after a damp day. Yeah, and all to pay respects. Some went out afterwards to kind of further discuss. Track photographers John Lane and Jim Smith were there. Pat McKee was there as well. And Pat was actually generous enough to give me a little bit of a montage of some photos that he took of Cliff over the years, because I found so much amazement in a single photo that he was able to edit together of Cliff standing by Andrew's car with the backdrop of the speedway behind him. So many people in such a short amount of time who got to interact with Cliff were able to pay their respects. And as I mentioned at the drop of the show, there will be a memorial service this Thursday, February 1st in Howell. And if you want some more information, we're going to share it on the RPM Podcast Facebook page. But the stories of Cliff will continue to go on. And that's why we felt it necessary to take this time and stray from the norm of the laughing and the joking that we usually have on the RPM Podcast and reflect on the life of a man who not only resurrected our faith in motorsports as a whole, not only for asphalt oval racing, not only for racing in the state of New Jersey, but also for the camaraderie that the sport of motorsports brings to you. And honestly, for us four gentlemen here tonight, it's what brought us all together. Cliff is single-handedly responsible for the friendships that the four of us all seem to share here today. And I mean, Scott, it's also an avenue for you and your wife, Nancy, as you guys, compete at Wall Stadium Speedway every week. And prior to that, Nancy competed in the powder puff races in the factory stock ranks. Once you and her, were in the process of moving closer in your personal relationship. I mean, the dive that Cliff and Diane both have taken as a family helped so many people beyond just providing a place to race. And it's evident here, and it's evident in so many different ways. And Scott, I'm sure you can attest to that on a further level.
I mean, really, that goes for any racetrack. I mean, racetracks are where people meet. People meet, people break up at racetracks too. You know what I'm saying? Friendships are made and friendships are destroyed. So you can look at it both ways. But no, you're right. I mean, by the Krauses keeping the track open, it extended my racing career a little bit. It started Nancy's on top of it. But I mean, I'm a racer. I mean, if Wall was to close, I would just go race somewhere else, to tell you the truth. You know, I'm willing to travel. I like to travel. But it's
I don't
great.
know that I would have met you.
Right. I mean, I want to know Josh, and I want to be sitting here freezing in his laundry room right now. But no, I mean, all racetracks are like that. Wall Stadium, it's our track because it's the closest one to us, you know, and it's a great meeting people there. I know we're just telling Cliff Krause stories, but I do have a pretty good, funny one. They had a monster truck show one year, and they were promised junk cars from some area junkyards, and they didn't have enough, you know. So he called me in a little bit of a panic on, I think it was like a Friday, and the monster truck show was that Sunday. He's like, Scott, we need some junk cars. The people that are putting the monster truck show on are telling us they need 20 to 25 cars. We only have 10. Can you get us like 10? I think Robbie Heyer can get us 5 from H&H. We really need 10 to 15 more. You know, we're willing to give you tickets to come see the show. If you get the cars from the Bluets, we're willing to give them tickets to come see the show. Whatever we need to do, we need junk cars. So I went and saw Grandpa Blewett. I said, hey, Cliff is a little short on junk cars for the monster truck show. He really needs cars bad. Grandpa's like, Scott, just take whatever you want. Just make sure you bring them back to me. As long as you're hauling them all over there, you know, I trust that they'll come back. I said, yeah, no problem. We ran all the cars over there anyway. Cliff gave us a stack of tickets. I gave them out at Bluets. Bluets gave them out to some of our customers. So Sunday we go back to the monster truck show to watch the monster truck show. This is like in 2012 when the Cruses were really just getting going, and it was a bust. There was literally like maybe 100 people in the grandstands, and monster truck shows are known for packing them in, you know. And I looked at Cliff. I said, Cliff, this ain't good. It's 1 o'clock. There's 10 people in the grandstands. It starts at 1:15. He's like, I know. So whatever, we had the cars all set, situated, and ready to go, and maybe about 100, maybe 200 people showed up for this monster truck show. So I said, Cliff, what are you gonna do? He's like, well, ain't nothing I can do now. He's like, Scott, I'm losing my shirt here. He's like, we're talking upwards like 40 grand. I'm losing on this show. He says, just come sit with me in the grandstands and we'll watch it together. We got our own private monster truck show. Let's just go watch this thing. And we did. We sat in the grandstands and we watched it. And he sat there with a smile on his face and he loved the show. He was just a fan in the stands, and he had his private, he called it, this is my private monster truck show. Let's just go watch it, enjoy it. And he didn't worry about getting beat up. It was a bad show, you know?
Yeah. Not
Not a bad show. It was a bad attended show, and he lost money on it. And sometimes you lose money, and he just took it in stride. And I kind of liked that. That was pretty neat, you know?
That's all. I love that they brought some of that. 'Cause, I mean, these are events that, had disappeared from the track for quite some time, like demo derbies and the monster truck things, which, used to be, I wouldn't say regular, but they happened.
Yeah.
And it all disappeared. And, they've been bringing this stuff back. And it is taking a chance sometimes, but I'm so glad to see them, doing that and trying to stay versatile with the track. So,
and I mean, there were so many uphill battles that Cliff had to face. I remember at the height of where we were doing some of the work in the factory, when I got to kind of talk to Cliff about the ins and outs. I mean, he tried having bike nights at the Speedway on Friday nights, and until the township came in and started asking for like decibel readings for pedal bikes. I mean, they tried building the RC track, and they wanted to do like an excavation survey.
I forgot about the RC track. Yeah.
He said, I'm trying to do everything I can with this place, and it's like everything is against me, which further, and that's the thing, Cliff never made a public fuss about it. He never made it publicly known that these were some of the struggles he was going through. He just kind of bit the bullet and rode with it. And like Scott said, a lot of the times he had a smile on his face, and he enjoyed what he was able to put together. And I think that's something I'll take from Cliff as I continue to move forward in my own life and my own ventures is, no matter what battles you may face, if you could always find a way to make the best of it, and it may still reap the rewards. I mean, I honestly think I've been going to Wall Stadium as a fan for the last 11 years, which may not be saying much compared to some of our listeners, but I think it's as healthy as it's ever been. And Cliff and Diane and Emily and Andrew all have so much to do with it. And that's why, even though Cliff may not be there going forward, at least, in the first person point of view, I really think the track is still in good hands. And in the first press release that came out, when we knew that Cliff was in poor health, the attention still remains on a 2018 schedule, and I can't tip my cap anymore to the bravery and determination of Diane, Emily, and Andrew in such a tough time. Um, and it's all a testament to the foundation that they built together as a family. Sam, you go.
Real quick, I've worked for the Krause since 2015, not that long, but I've been going to wall all my life. The professionalism that I got to know Cliff and the whole Krause family, when Scott mentioned it off air, we talked a little bit about when calls don't go a certain driver's way. Most of the time, I've realized in my experience, the driver takes it easier than the team. As an official, being right next to where Cliff was standing, he never once grabbed, yelled, got in my face. And I think that shows the respect not only does he have for the sport, but for his employees. And I know if the Krause family is listening, if the Supreme Manufacturer team is listening, that's something I took out of Cliff Krause, was that there was a fine line in the sand and he never crossed it. And as an official and as an employee, I appreciate that. And it's a very unique situation that I'm not sure any other track has in the country, where you have a father of one of the competitors run the place, and he never once tried to use that as his advantage. So.
And it's going to make his loss felt all the more so as the season continues to approach rather quickly. And as we said, still a memorial service left to go, and a lot of healing for the Krause family and for all of us at the Wall Stadium Speedway community.
I think Thursday is going to be a very well-attended viewing. I think it's going to be probably one of the biggest ones I've ever been to, and going back to when John Blewett the third passed away, I went to that viewing. Man, I've never seen so many people in one place. They were busting us in. I think the Cliff Krause Memorial is going to be very similar. They are doing something pretty cool, too. Did you see that they're serving food afterwards?
Yes.
And it's going to be all Cliff's favorite type dinners and stuff.
In a buffet style.
Yeah. I think that's pretty neat. It's going to be cool to see what Cliff's favorite meals were. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's going to be very different.
Liverworth.
Yeah.
Well, we'll find out. We'll see how that goes. I don't want to say I'm looking forward to it, but I'm very intrigued by how this is going to pan out. And I think it's a wonderful idea to try to keep it positive and that they invited all, because they seem to be like they could be a very private family, and that they're leaving this open to everyone to pay their respects and to share these memories and spend time together. I think that's a very, very amazing thing for the family to do. And
Eric, are you going?
Yes.
You better believe he's going.
It starts at 5 o'clock, Eric. 5 o'clock. I think so.
So let's put it in your calendar as 3 o'clock.
So, Eric, what you should do is bring that loud Bluetooth speaker of yours you were using in the airport last month and play the RPM podcast for everyone to listen to, because that was Cliff, one of his favorite racing podcasts to listen to weekly.
Yes.
And we're not just saying that. Cliff did tell us every week that he did listen to the show. And for those of you maybe looking for details again, and we'll have it posted on the RPM podcast Facebook page, 5 p.m. at the Homedale Community United Church of Christ at 40 Main Street in Homedale, New Jersey. And as Scott kindly mentioned, a buffet dinner of Cliff's favorite foods will follow. And in lieu of flowers, all donations can be made to a local animal, easy for me to say, rescue. At homefreeanimalrescue.com or mail to Home Free Animals 64 White Street, Red Bank, New Jersey, as that was something that Cliff was incredibly passionate about. And our hearts ache, they hurt, but we will continue to move forward. And I promise, Cliff, that the legacy of Wall Stadium Speedway and everything that you've ever touched in your life will continue to live on, especially at the hands of Andrew, Emily, as well as Diane, because it's just wonders what you guys have been able to do, not only to our racetrack, but to everything that you guys have ever been involved in. And it's going to be tough to move forward. And I'll give credit to the guys back in the studio and in North Carolina as dubbing this episode a supreme thank you to Cliff Krause as we mourn his passing over this past week. And we elected to take the time to kind of reflect on his life and legacy. Gentlemen, before we close the floor, I just want to give you all one more opportunity to say whatever may be on your mind.
Do you know
Anybody.
what Cliff's age was?
I believe he was 65 years old.
That's too young.
Yeah, I didn't see it posted just yet, but I was talking to Tommy Chilson, who is one of the head team members on Andrew's modified team last night, and he was I was very happy to see Tommy kind of carrying the banner for the Krause family at the Vigil last night, as they were just flooded with all sorts of other duties and responsibilities to take care of, and Tommy was there to represent the family quite well, and he came out with us afterwards, and it was a very tough time for all of us. And Cliff, we love you. We miss you. And although we have a seat reserved for you in the house, I'm sure that you would want us to go on with our show as we originally planned as promised. And we're going to do just that when we come back on the other side. In the meantime, I want to ask all of our listeners, whether you be national or local, to take a moment and remember the life and legacy of Cliff Krause, as we will do just that going forward. And when we come back to the RPM podcast, we will bring you our show as we originally planned. We want to thank you all for joining us in a moment, along with Scott Riggleman, Josh Matthews, Sam Ballard, and myself, as we remember the life and legacy of Cliff Krause.
Got a question you want answered? Email us at racingpodcastnj@gmail.com.
Welcome back to RPM Podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the RPM podcast. Sam Ballard Jr., Josh Matthews, and Scott Riggleman joining us here today. And, of course, I'm Eric Bredin, as we will now get back into our regular swing of things. First of all, Scott, you got to judge the Miss Motorsports competition between the last time that we got a chance to talk to you. I know that was on your bucket list. So how did that all pan out for you?
It was really good. You know, earlier I was talking to Sam, talking about Lenny Salmons himself. Every show he runs is very, very professional. I mean, the indoor races, the motorsports show itself. So I wanted to, get a little of the back scenes of the pageant itself. And I'm telling you, they have a lady that runs pageants, and she was running the show, and it was very, very professional, and it was very well done, and it was great being part of it.
Now, the question is, though, was it everything you thought it would be?
Yeah, it was good. No, it was good. Was it everything I thought it would be? Maybe not, but it was close.
If you're not watching this, if you're listening to this, if you're on iTunes or whatever, Scott's eyes are so wide and bright as he's talking about that.
It was a lot of fun.
Scott, you'd be surprised. When I got down to Atlantic City last week, so many people came up to me, how does Scott Riggleman get to judge Miss Motorsports and not me? And I'm like, have you seen his resume? Like, leave him alone?
Oh,
my goodness.
It really came down to just asking. I saw Lenny at the Matheny Christmas party, and he was standing there drinking, and we were talking, and I said, hey, Lenny, I've always wanted to judge Miss Motorsports, and I noticed you always have big national names there, and you have local track division champions in the premier divisions at tracks. How about a support division? He's like, let me guess, you won the championship at Wall City with the factory stocks. I said, yeah. He's like, you know what, Scott, that is a great idea. We should have a support division champion do it. He's like, if you want to do it, come do it. And he gave me his information. I emailed him. And then I found out that Danny Salmons, his wife, she's the one that actually takes care of everything. So then she was texting me and emailing me, and we got it set up, and I went and did it, and it was a lot of fun.
You said you're going back next year?
Well, they asked me if I would, and of course I said yes. So it was pretty good. I was surprised they asked me back. They liked the way things went. They have to have 10 judges. They do use 10 judges, and sometimes they use the same ones year after year. Some people can't make it back, so they replace them with other people. So I'm definitely going to try to do it again next year.
Now, is it like for voting? Is it? I know there's different segments. There's an interview. There's the bikini. There's different parts to it. But is it like a 1 to 10 kind of thing?
It's definitely a 1 to 10 thing. They give you a sheet of paper. The girls all have numbers. We go by their numbers, not their names.
Okay.
You notice when they came out in the swimsuit, and I think they call it sportswear, when they came out in the dresses, they all have numbers on them. Same thing, and when they came in and did the interview process, they said, girl number 12, she would sit down in the room with us. The lady that ran the pageant would ask 4 to 5 questions. We would listen to the way the girls answered them, and then we were allowed to ask our own questions. And we had a sheet of paper in front of us, and there was 21 girls there this year doing it. and it was 1 through 21. So when the girl got done answering her questions, we had a score from 1 to 10 and put it next to her number, and that went for all the sportswear and the swimsuit and the interview process. And as soon as we were done with those sheets of paper, they would grab them and take them back to be tallied up. It was pretty cool how it went.
Nice. Go ahead, Eric.
No, I was going to say it's a whole nother level of giving you like inside information on the RPM podcast. Like we're not even just talking about stuff at the racetrack. We're telling you how they judge Miss Motorsports. Like this is incredible.
Since when do you keep your women and racing together, Eric?
Ever since Danica Patrick got herself a ride for the Daytona 500, as a matter of
That's
fact.
how you do a segue.
So this is rather relevant. Danica actually announced she's going to be driving for Premier Motorsports, which does in fact have a locked-in position in the 2018 Daytona 500. And Sam,
and is a Chevy, which will most likely be Hendrick Motorsports powered. So Danica Patrick might have a legitimate shot of becoming a Daytona 500 champion. That's all I'm saying.
I'm hearing ECR engines.
Regardless, it's the same thing.
The cool thing about Danica getting that ride, other than the fact that Josh gets to see her race one more time at the NASCAR level, her crew chief. Did you guys hear who her crew chief is going to be for that race?
Tony Uri Jr. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool that they're doing that. Tony Uri Jr. Hasn't been crew chief at the Cup level in a couple of years, but he was Danica's first crew chief, so they're kind of reuniting for this race. And listening to Tony Uri talk on a couple other shows, he said part of the deal was because he has Fury race cars, so he's real busy with his own business. He told Danica, he'd come back and do it, but only if she would bring him to the Indy 500. Because he's never been. So right. I thought that was pretty cool that, he's going to be not crew chiefing for her at the Indy 500, but he will be attending it,
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And then she's going to have, she's not going to be alone at Daytona because you still have, Natalie Decker and I forget how to pronounce the other girl's name, running in the ARCA series, I believe.
Leilani Munter will be the other one that will be competing. Yeah. Sam, I saw you get ready to fire off something.
I completely forgot what I was going to say. I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, we'll play it off by telling you who else will be in the Daytona 500 field, and that will be Jeffrey Earnhardt, which I was surprised until I opened up our little cheat sheet that we have here. 40 years of having an Earnhardt in the field at Daytona almost came. Thank you, Sam.
You're welcome.
Our official statistician for the RPM podcast. And I don't know.
What car is he going to be driving, Eric?
It's the new Starcom racing team that developed. I think they only ran one race last season. Derek Hope has a huge part in this.
Yeah, Josh. Say your joke, Josh.
I was going to say it's car number 0, which is exactly how many laps he's going to complete.
0.
Dumbass.
But Eric, you're an electrician, and you were telling me the other night that you do, what type of electrician work you do. That Starcom that owns that race team is a New Jersey-based business, and they do like Wi-Fi type stuff. Have you ever even heard of them?
No, I haven't. I mean, the name sounds familiar, but I'm not familiar with them. In fact, now I'm a little bit more curious. I'll have to do a little more homework.
They might actually be able to improve your Wi-Fi connection.
They may be able to. So if only they could improve my scheduling, then everybody would win.
I was going to say real quick with Danica Patrick, she was on the Joe Rogan podcast show last week or 2 weeks ago. Fantastic job. Danica Patrick is a huge personality. And if anyone's free, I don't endorse other podcasts on the show, but go check them out.
Not safe for work, though.
Well, a question. Do you guys think would it have been a big deal if there was a Daytona 500 field without the Earnhardt name in it? Or
no, I mean, I went through it too. I'm a little bit older than you guys. I went through it when there was no Petty name in it. When Kyle Petty I watched the last Petty race when Kyle didn't come back and run. I mean, it's a 5-minute story before the race, and then once they throw the green flag, you really don't think about it. Is it cool that the Earnhardt name is still continuing in the Daytona Farm? Sure, it is. But when it ends, it ends. I mean, like I said, I watched the Petty name end at the Daytona 500, and I think they won almost 50 years too. So, I mean, it happens.
It's kind of like one of those things that Eric can have something to talk about during a caution.
Right,
red
right.
flag.
That's why I put it there for the live show.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. We're looking forward to it. Now, also something else that broke in terms of driver developments and whatnot. BK Racing has this weird thing going on with this charter system where we really don't know the status of where their charter lays. Apparently, they used it as collateral in terms of a sale to a bank, in terms of race ownership, and it's gotten incredibly hard to figure out. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm rather confused. The whole charter thing I thought was going to allow teams the opportunity to kind of franchise their racing efforts, and I don't think it has done just that. And I'm kind of tired of it. I wouldn't mind seeing it go away at this point, actually. I don't think it did anything but make Rob Kaufman, who was involved in the sport when the charter deal was in place, then sold his shares and got out once the charter deal was set in stone. I think it's done nothing but make him a couple of bucks, and I wouldn't mind seeing it dissolve itself.
The problem with the charter system is when they were getting 45 to 50 cars a race, you needed the charter system, but it was almost like the charter wasn't worth nothing last year because there was times there wasn't full fields anyway. So why would you buy a charter when they were only getting 38, 39 cars anyway? You didn't need it. That's where the charter fell short of having a value. And I do agree what you said about Rob Kaufman. He was a very smart business guy. He knew he was getting out of racing, so he kind of developed this charter thing, got some value, and sold it. You know what I'm saying? It was a pretty smart deal that he did. Do I like the charter system? I mean, if I could afford one, I love it. But it almost makes it like a billionaires club. You know, it almost scares the smaller teams away. You know.
Well, I mean, you go back to, let's talk the 70s, 80s when, and it goes back to those old photos of the guys swapping out motors. There was a story, my dad, I wish he was here right now. I think he has the article, or he left it down here for me. It was, I forget the team, but they blew a motor in either practice or qualifying. They took the motor out of the son's truck that was at the track, swapped it into the race car, and were able to make the race.
Right.
And that's kind of the the engineering, the redneck engineering that used to be involved in it. And now it's such a specialized thing that without it, you either needed this charter thing, or now there's just not enough cars anymore because you have to be that level of an operation to compete. You can't do that stuff anymore.
You know what? Like, charter is just a new name. This has been going on in NASCAR racing forever. They were always swapping numbers. Before it was your number held your points from the year before. So people would just use other people's numbers.
Yeah.
They would buy someone's number. Now they're calling it a charter system.
And you had provisionals and all sorts of stuff. I agree. I don't know. They seem to hype up the charter thing when they announced it.
Well, that's what we were talking about a little bit earlier off air. We were saying that the lower class teams now, the one value they do have is when they have the charter and someone like Danica has a sponsor and she's looking for a ride, she'll go. I mean, she's aware of Premier Motorsports, you know what I'm saying? Premier Motorsports is not a premier team, you know what I'm saying? But they do have the golden egg sort of having a charter. So now Danica will bring her GoDaddy money there for the one race because she's guaranteed into the show, you know?
And they can still make merch sales and everything
else. But then again, with
that.
this guaranteed into the show stuff, how boring is the dual race is going to be now, you know what I'm saying?
What's the point of qualifying?
Yeah, right.
But then at that point, it's like our heat races where, generally everybody's going to get in the show. So it's going to be just where you start.
Yeah, it's basically another practice.
What's the point of racing when Jeffrey Earnhardt's going to win?
Yeah, right. You know what, though? I mean, did you see the car? I don't really think it was an actual car. I think it was just a rendition of how the car is going to look. It looks awesome. He does have a good sponsor. I mean, back in, I forget what year it was, but I did work with Derek Cope at Daytona one year when he drove for Arnold Motorsports. A lot of people put Derek down, but I got to know him real well. He's a very, very smart man. Very, very smart. He knows the race cars.
I mean, that'd be like 2004-ish.
Yeah, it was we had Thrifty Car Rental on the car. Mike Hillman was the crew chief. I got involved because my friend Shannon Connor was on the team. Me and Nancy were down there. They were shorthanded. We helped them all weekend. We had a great time. Got to know Derek a little bit. His knowledge of the cars were pretty good. They have Tony Fuhr, Tony, crew chief in the car. He was a well-known crew chief. I mean, he hasn't crew chiefed in a while, but I mean, with this, with the bodies being so close to each other now, and them, leasing the same engine as somebody else. And if they have the money behind them, they could put up a fight. You know what I'm saying? Can they win? No. But could they run 20th? Maybe. You never know. I mean, we've watched small teams like Front Row Motorsports with David Reagan and them, steal a win here or there on the plate races. The plates, the restrictor plate really evens things out, Bad wrecks. I mean, we've seen races at Talladega where they're down to like 6 or 7 cars,
Yes.
If Jeffrey Earnhardt's one of those 6 or 7 cars and his car's complete, he might have a shot. You just never know,
And let's say even if he doesn't win, you finish 6th at one of those big races. I mean, he's still walking away with bringing money to that team that they, might not have otherwise.
Now, Sam, I was driving truck all day, so I was only checking my phone briefly. Some reports that said Jeffrey Earnhardt was driving this car for Daytona 500, and then if I read it correctly, some people said he was in it all year. Is this a one race deal or is this for the whole season?
I think as of right now, from the articles I read, it's just for the 500.
Just for the 500.
But I mean, it could also very well change after the 500 when he wins it. So I mean, things
you heard it here first.
And real quick, the important part that I brought up the BK Racing thing was the problem is the bank loaned BK Racing the money to buy the charter, and when BK Racing closed down, they owe money still for that charter, and BK leased that charter out like it was theirs. However, legally, it's not. It's the bank's. So the problem is who gets that money and how much of that money goes where.
You know what, though? NASCAR can step in there and just I'm sure they got something in the contract. If a bank owns one of their charters, NASCAR can just discontinue that charter.
They'll just dissolve the system.
Right.
That's
it. Trust me, NASCAR's seen this coming. And it's just a word in a piece of paper, and I'm sure NASCAR has a power where in the real world that this bank is thinking this charter has a value. I'm sure NASCAR has an out where they can just dissolve that charter real quick, and the bank's stuck with a piece of paper.
Yep.
Speaking of charters, RCR just announced officially this week, since we haven't been on, that they're going to a 3-car charter to 2-car charter for the season, which, Scott, you mentioned maybe that's where the 00 is getting their charter from.
Yeah, they're definitely getting their charter from the 27. And another thing, there was rumors about Jeffrey Earnhardt going to the 27, and now he's not in the 27, but he does have the charter with Starcom. Which is great. I mean, for a small startup team like that to get a charter from a big team like Richard Childress on a lease option, it goes to show you, I don't think they have that much value. I don't really think they had that type of money to buy it where you think it's worth millions. I think it's well shy of something like that,
Yeah, I'm not using the charter this week.
And that's another reason why, Sam, I think Derek Cope's team with this 00 is having Childress motors and not Hendrick motors because of the charter. Right. I think that might have been tied in. Hey, you lease your motors from me, you can have the charter too, There might have been a package deal.
I lied. Jeffrey will be in the car for the whole season.
See?
Wow. So it's a whole year.
Let's all bet on that. I mean, all these teams, and from going to Speed Weeks, for years, I've noticed all these teams come in with all these big plans, and it's just I just think to myself, I put it in the back of my mind, okay, you're saying you're running a full season. Let's see if you make it through Atlanta. Let's see, where you go when they hit the West Coast swing. A lot of them fizzle out before they even go to the West Coast swing. So, Sam, with that being said, that Jeffrey Earnhardt's in the car all year, how many here in this room right now think that he's going to be in it? I don't see it happening, If it does, great. If he has a sponsor and they can get that team to that level and they make all the races with Jeffrey driving, great for Jeffrey, But
now, speaking of people who may be able in certain seats for a certain amount of time, the NASCAR Media Tour took place this past week, and I must say I'm very happy that this was the first time in a long time that there were no major changes announced in terms of the point standing system or race formats or anything else. It seems like we're going to be able to have 2 years back-to-back for the first time in a long time where there are not many significant changes. However, there were many interviews done with a lot of drivers and teams and organizations, and the one storyline that stuck out from the media tour were comments made by Kyle Busch, where he said that he felt that NASCAR is going a little bit above and beyond in terms of promoting the youth of the sport. And by youth, I mean drivers along the lines of Chase Elliott, Ryan Blaney, Darrell Wallace Jr., and the list seems to go on and on. He feels as though NASCAR may not be paying enough attention to some of the veteran racers like himself, his brother Kurt, or Kevin Harvick, or Denny Hamlin, or any other driver who remains in a veteran status in the sport. And Scott, as somebody who has been around racing for quite some time and has gone up against a lot of the young blood in the sport, I'm curious as to where you stand on the subject. Should we be embracing the young talent that is coming up through the ranks, or do you feel that a driver of a veteran nature kind of earns their position in the spotlight?
A little bit of both. I think NASCAR does a good job of promoting the younger guns, which is good. I also heard like Ryan Blaney say the reason why they're promoting it is because they're willing to do it, where some of these older guys already made their money, like a Kyle Busch. You see him going on these cruises and stuff as soon as the race season's over. He's not available for it, If he makes himself available, I'm sure NASCAR would love to promote him also. I don't think it's really NASCAR not promoting the older drivers. I just think it's the older drivers not wanting to put the work in. Maybe like the young guys coming into it, looking to do it. I mean, like you said, like I did the Miss Motorsports thing, and part of the reason I did is to promote myself a little bit, and I think Kyle Busch can just promote himself a little bit better. I don't think he should leave it up to NASCAR,
Well, I think there's some that at this point, staying power, in other words, that, Kyle Busch, I mean, he was, it's a common name. Everybody, Kyle Busch.
Yeah.
You hate him, you booed him for years. Some people are starting to turn and like him now. That's fine. But the name is already kind of cemented in there.
Right.
Whereas the young guys, I mean, there's a lot of people fighting for some of those seats. And if they don't go along and promote it, there may be pressure on them from others, or they're putting it on themselves that I got to make my name, common. I mean, Chase Elliott, has a lot of people because of his dad, so they're supporting him. Similar to all the people that were Dale Senior fans, from they jumped right onto Dale Junior. But Bubba Wallace, kind of, I don't want to say came out of nowhere. I mean, he's been a racer for a long time, but on this level, with this type of exposure, take advantage of it, embrace it, and I don't think it's so much NASCAR's end as they might feel the need that they need their names to stay there and be common, so that way they can stay in that level of the sport and not be forgotten.
Some of the other comments that drew a lot of attention was by Brad Keselowski, who said we need to see more of the leader of the sport. And by that, he was talking about, of course, Brian France. Another bit of irony that kind of ties into this storyline was an announcement that came down today. Depending on when you may be listening to the RPM podcast, we were recording this on Tuesday, January 30th. Ben Kennedy, who is another generation of the France Kennedy family, will be taking a role in terms of the general manager of the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series. However, Keselowski's comment said that he doesn't see that the sport could be successful when the head of the organization or the head of NASCAR is not at the track every week. Now, we talked in the first segment about Cliff Krause and his presence at Wall Stadium Speedway and how important it is, even though he took a little bit of a backseat role. I kind of agree with Keselowski's stance. Without Brian France at the Speedway, I think it's a bad optic for the sport to kind of grow and for somebody to kind of gauge the vibe that is being given off in the garage area in each every week. And Keselowski raised a lot of eyebrows with his comments, and I'm curious what you guys have to say about it.
You always want the head of your sport at the sporting events, but you got to remember, they have a 36 race schedule. Does Brian France really need to be at every single race? Not really. Should he be? Yeah, I think he should be, but I don't think he has to be. I'm sure he's getting notified. I'm sure he's talking to people. I mean, he hires all these people to do this job, so maybe he steps back and let them do the job. And who knows where he's at? Like people are saying, all right, he's not at the racetrack this weekend, but they're not saying where he's at. He could be over in Europe checking on NASCAR in Europe. He could be down in Mexico checking on NASCAR in Mexico. He could be up in Canada checking up on NASCAR in Canada. I mean, if he misses 2 races to go on a vacation, good for him. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he can miss a couple.
But you're saying it doesn't necessarily mean he's at Trump's golf course every week.
Right, exactly. He could be just somewhere else, you know what I'm saying?
And you can still watch it. I mean, with the access you have now. You could be watching the broadcast as well.
Wow. He did endorse Trump. He could be playing golf with him.
He could be.
To Scott's point, There is a huge public push that NASCAR is really looking for another manufacturer to try to join the fray because they're the most likely to dump a ton of money into the sport.
Dodge.
So Scott, that's a perspective that I haven't really thought of. However, I do kind of see where Keselowski's coming from when the leader of the sport is not there to kind of get a gauge on what's happening. Also, I just can't help but remember that awkward exchange between himself and Martin Truex.
Yeah, that was crazy. I still can't figure that out.
Yeah.
I mean, it just seems like that Brian Francis is a guy who's a little bit disengaged with the sport right now, and I'd like to see him get a little bit more hands-on. Maybe that's why they're kind of grooming Ben Kennedy to start doing some of that stuff on the Truck Series side. But we'll have to see how that plays out over time.
But I don't know Ben Kennedy. I don't know his background or anything, but he is 26 years old. I don't know if he's ready to take over NASCAR quite yet. But like you said, they're starting him small. They're starting him in the Truck Series, and good. Maybe he'll like it. Do I think Brian France is doing a great job with the sport of NASCAR? No, I don't. But I think by him missing a couple races a year is not as big a deal as some people are making it out to be.
Now, something that may be along the same lines as Ben Kennedy's role that he may take with the Truck Series, and I'll cycle this back to more changes that were made to the Charlotte Roval, the road course and oval combination event that will take place in October as part of the championship rounds in the latter stages of the Monster Energy Cup Series season. The changes that were made were elected to shave off some additional time, something that was a point of concern for a lot of people, considering the fact that the race distance was of question. However, it kind of cycled back to some media members, such as Matt Weaver, saying maybe we should start utilizing some of these facilities that are part of already existing Cup Series tracks to kind of harness or kind of change up a little bit as to what we see on the racing weekend. He cycled maybe using the Las Vegas Bull Ring for a Truck Series event. It's an SMI-owned portion of Las Vegas Motor Speedway. There's also a dirt track at Charlotte that could be utilized for a Truck Series race or two. And it could kind of add a little bit of variety. So although the Roval change is something we're not going to see come to fruition until they get there to use it, the theory that maybe we could start using some of these properties that are already on the Cup Series calendar for different types of events has begun to raise some eyebrows. So, Sam, I see you clapping your hands saying this is something that you may think.
Eric, you want to know why NASCAR is never going to do that? Because it makes too much sense. That is why NASCAR will never do it. I came down here looking for a job in NASCAR. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to trash them right now, right here. NASCAR needs to change. You heard it first on the RPM podcast. It needs to change. You have old men in old positions. We need new guys. And Ben Kennedy is not the guy. Hey, maybe we'll have a cup of coffee. Maybe we'll see. But the Roval, they're wasting their time with. You're exactly right. We have the bullpen over in Las Vegas. We have the dirt track over in Charlotte Motor Speedway. Used it. That dirt race was packed, sold out, standing room only. I paid $45 to freeze my ass off my feet for 3 hours. Best $45 I spent in my life. NASCAR needs more of that crap, but they don't because they're not business savvy. They just want to fill their pockets.
Scott, you've done some dirt racing already in your racing career, and it's something that you seem to have had a lot of fun with. Do you think dirt racing has a home in the top 3 levels of NASCAR?
I mean, they do very good with the outdoor race, but there again, it's a one-year thing. I think if you do it too many times, it's not going to have the same appeal as doing it once a year. I mean, I understand what Sam's saying, but here's the other thing too: is that these tracks built these big racetracks, these big beautiful racetracks, and they only get to race on them twice a year. So by having the other lower series race on the same tracks, they kind of get their money's worth out of the racetrack. I would love to see the trucks back on short tracks. Like Josh said, one of the first NASCAR races he wants to was the truck racing at Flemington. I thought that's a perfect fit for a series like that. Once they started putting them on Daytona and stuff, they lost a little bit of their appeal, As far as having IRP was awesome. You can go way out when they went to, the Evergreen track out in Washington. They put on good shows out there. Put them on dirt twice a year might hurt outdoor a little bit, but it's not a bad idea. I do like the trucks at Charlotte. And it's so hard to say, I mean, you could set up cones in a parking lot and I'll watch a race. I don't care, you know what I'm saying? But,
I second that.
Well, Scott was telling me he leaves MAV TV on a lot in his garage, and he instead of watching the Rolex 24, he forgot it was on. He ended up watching some.
Yeah, the swamp buggy races from like 2 years ago. But I'll watch any type of racing. I personally I don't like the Roval idea at Charlotte because we're losing another oval track race to a road course, and Mike Skinner took his truck out on he does historic racing. He did a test over on the Roval at Charlotte, and I was watching a little bit of it, and he even had an in-car camera, and I was watching a little bit of it. I don't think there's going to be much passing. I really don't. It's a very, very tight racetrack. I think it's going to be all track position. I think people aren't going to take tires pit, and they're going to try to make the spots up on pit road. I just don't think it's going to be a very good race. I really don't.
I was going to say I admire that. Scott mentioned that the track only gets them for 1 or 2 races a year, and you want to have all the divisions there and get your money worth out of it. And by doing the Roval, you're still utilizing the track, so you're not losing a race. You're just using it in a different configuration. So I admire that part. I personally don't think the Roval is going to work that well, like too tight, too flat, things like that. But at least they're trying to utilize the facility or the same facility still, and I'm all for that. But it's just a matter of changing it, because I think Watkins Glen can be a hell of a race, but more room, it's dedicated to that.
I think Dale Jr. said it best. He said, someone asked him, is NASCAR desperate to turn things around? And he looked at the camera and said, they're running the road course at Charlotte. Does that show you how desperate they are? and that made sense to me. And ever since he said that, it just stuck in my mind. And like I said, watching Mike Skinner out there with the truck, it was just like, I don't know. The track's too tight, I think. And my perfect NASCAR weekend is when they have the truck race on Friday night. So we get home from work, we can watch. When they're like 8 o'clock at night, we watch it.
Oh yeah.
Then they have the Xfinity race on Saturday, Cup race on Sunday. I think that's the perfect weekend at a racetrack. Even if you're going to the event, by having the trucks on Friday night, if you're getting out of work, driving 3 hours to say Pocono, well, now you're there in time for the truck race, and you have racing the whole weekend.
Yeah.
Would I be fine when they're in Vegas to put the trucks on the short track? Yeah, I would be fine with that. But then again, you have this beautiful facility right next door, and the trucks could be racing there too.
Yeah.
Eric
Graham would argue the 1.5 mile end of it, though. But that's a
lot of people don't like 1.5 mile track. Yeah. The old cookie cutter cliche or whatever. Yeah. At one time, that was the hot ticket. But there again, by Sam, are we interrupting your dinner? But Sam was saying he would love to see the trucks on the dirt track at Charlotte, which a lot of people would. But then we're just going by what you said. Eric Graham didn't like the 1.5 mile tracks because we got too many of them. So now, by what Sam's saying, he wants to put the trucks on the dirt track at Charlotte. Now, are we getting the trucks on dirt too much? You know what I'm saying?
I think if you do 2 or 3 dirt races,
2 makes sense to me, because now if you're building a truck for dirt, you get to use it twice at least. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Not just once. So maybe Sam does have a good idea where they could run at Charlotte on the dirt and the bull ring at Vegas. I'd be fine with that.
Okay.
What about tracks like Grandview?
I don't.
It's a little tight for them, but I think
Grandview only holds upwards of like 7,500 people. I don't think they can make their money back at that.
It's a guaranteed pack of the night.
Well, no, it would be, but I think listening to Kevin Harvick on his radio show, he says you have to make it financially success. You have to on a short track. He's very favorable of the trucks going back to short track racing, but he says you need at least 15,000 people. A short track that can hold 15,000 people for it to be profitable. And Flemington, I'm telling you, I think they held 10 grand, and they were packed the first couple of times, And I was lucky enough to go there. I was good friends with John Blewett III, and he raced in a few of those races, and we had a lot of fun going to those races.
Yeah, I think I went. I want to say it was 97 or 98. I think it was that I went there.
I think the truck.
The only thing that I'll say. Go ahead, Scott.
I think the truck series. Started out with a great concept with the short track racing, with the halfway break, so you didn't need the $1 million pit crews. And then NASCAR wanted to turn it into an industry like their other divisions, where Chevy and Ford and Dodge would put a lot of money into it to sell the trucks, and they got really big. And it did work for a while, but I think I don't think the money's there.
Well, it also kind of helped build that perfect race weekend of the Friday night, Saturday, Sunday,
Yeah.
show. You get a race each day.
Yeah, I still love that weekend. I know it's hard for tracks to do that because number one, they need lighting for the Friday night truck race.
Yes.
But when I look at the schedule and I see that, like, Monday or Tuesday, I'm like, wow, the truck race is on Friday. Me and Nancy would even say, man, the truck race is on Friday night, man. We could load the race cars up Friday night and order food and watch the truck race and go to sleep. It works perfect for us.
Yeah.
Then
See, I'm looking for love in all the wrong places. Exactly. Like that, I'm looking for love in all the wrong places.
But
like
then,
that, if I could work to that, I'd be in heaven.
and then same thing
You'd
on
be 3 hours late, but you'd be in heaven.
Yeah.
I'd be 10 hours late if I was coming home to that.
But then again, on Saturday, it's perfect too because with the satellite radio on my truck that we towed a race car to track with, we listened to the Xfinity race on the way to Wall Stadium on Saturday. And then Sunday, we're unloading the race car stuff and we're watching the Cup race in the garage on Sunday. So that is a perfect race weekend to me. I know Eric grew up loving, which he was wrong. He loving the Saturday night Cup races, and he wondered why, a kid sitting on Staten Island, not knowing much about short track racing, but being a NASCAR fan, he loved the Saturday night Cup races. But now he's learned that it was hurting the short track, you know, because a guy like Eric Brennan, now he wasn't asking his parents to take him to Wall Stadium. He was flying home with a bag of Doritos and some soda, watching the Cup race on a Saturday night,
Or knocking on some stranger's door to watch.
But it was hurting.
I did that once.
And I was, when you said that at Motorsports, I was thinking the best way to explain that to you, I know Josh isn't a big football fan, but football kind of has it right. Friday night is for high school football. Saturday is for college football. Sunday is for professional football. And I think when NASCAR has the Friday night truck race, the Saturday day race for the Xfinity, so you can watch the day race and then go to your local short track Saturday night, and then you can enjoy a Cup race on Sunday. I think that is the perfect weekend.
I can't agree with you more, Scott. I really can't. That's perfect way
Scott
to wrap
Riddleman
up.
for president.
I'm on board.
Brian France, move your ass.
That was Scott's State of the Union address, as we are now only 19 days away from Daytona 500,
and we have some
Daytona Day
big
mantra.
news about the Daytona 500 for our little podcast, right, Eric?
Yeah, and I think the biggest news is that we just found out about 15 minutes ago that Scott Riggleman will, in fact, be joining us for this earth-shattering news we're about to break here. But we will have a live show with the RPM podcast with Josh. Sam would be there. He'll be there in spirit, of course, because he's got a couple things going on. We're going to check on the status of Nick Rendo at the third. But Scott Riggleman should be joining us, and I'll be there as well at River Rock in Brick, New Jersey. All the details and information will be posted at the RPM podcast Facebook page and website. It
already is.
Oh man, you guys are on the money. Well, I'm an hour and a half late. You guys are already taking care of business.
Someone's got to pick up your slack.
Got to thank Jeff, Eric Lane, everybody who makes all this stuff possible. Party's going to begin at 12. There will be a couple of prizes to be given away, drink and food specials. Of course, the race will be on TV.
Eric's favorite, the Coors Light girls will be there.
So yes, that is indeed a favorite of mine. So thank you. And we're going to be promoting this heavily as we get going. We want to see as many people there as we can. And we want to thank the people at River Rock for making it all possible. And I am pumped and cannot wait to get that underway. And that will be for the Daytona 500, February 18th. And again, the festivities will begin at 12 p.m. at River Rock. And for more information, visit the RPM Podcast Facebook page and website at therpmpodcast.com.
Now, I was they must think pretty highly of us. They're putting us up on the stage, I believe.
Yeah, I'm a little bit scared.
No, it's a beautiful venue. I've been there before. I'm very excited for this. It's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, everybody's going to have a great time, and just hope the race goes well and that there's no weather issues.
Yes, that is indeed an issue that I hope does not come to fruition, even at River Rock, where we'll have a couple of cars on staff. And Scott, the fact that I know that you're going to be joining us makes me feel so much better, because it's going to be a lot of fun having somebody who's so much in tune with racing as you are, especially leading into a big event like Daytona 500. So thank you for coming on board with us. As long as you get back from Florida safely.
Yeah, hopefully I should get back from Florida, no problem. Hopefully I can bring a couple trophies back with us too, to bring it over there from racing about Bronson Speedway down there.
That's gonna be a lot of fun.
Would love to share those trophies with you. The only trophy I ever got it's right over my shoulder for announcing at Wall. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh yeah, look at that shiny thing. What's the steering wheel? What's the steering wheel?
So, that's my little racing simulator for the computer at iRacing.
Oh, you're one of those.
That's his
guys.
plastic
Okay.
toy. It spins when
he's one of those guys. That explains a lot.
Aside from less,
I tell you
right
what,
now,
going back to iRacing,
months,
I'm an older guy and I'm a diehard racer. I always thought that iRacing stuff was like goofy or whatever. Sean Emmons, a friend of mine that I raced the Arch Truck Series with, he also ran legend cars for a while. He stopped racing at Wall because his son started racing quarter midgets. He invited me over his house one day. This is probably going back 7 years ago. He's like, Scott, he had the full setup, $1 million setup. He's like, try this iRacing stuff. He's like, I basically sold all my racing stuff and I do this now. And I was hesitant to do it. And I'm like, I'm not really, I've been racing my whole life. I'm not really into the computer thing, and I didn't. I tell you what, it was pretty cool. It was definitely cool. We did a legend car race at Southside Speedway, and just seeing some of the names on there that you were racing with was people that I knew through regular racing. So it was pretty cool. I mean, I don't know how much you're into it, Eric, but it's definitely cool. Do you do it a lot, or?
I did it to pass the time a couple of years ago, and I had a blast. I took pride in how well I thought I was doing, and then I got into one of your factory stocks. Well, not your factory stock, actually Josh's factory stock, and I realized that racing is not my forte. So there is definitely a difference between the online stuff and the real life stuff. For me, that may be somewhere in the balance of brake, throttle, and balls, because playing with the steering wheel doesn't require one of those three things. So it's a little bit different than what you're accustomed to or what you guys deal with, but it's fun. It's a good,
fun.
clean way to pass some time, especially when the weather's bad out and nobody's really doing it.
I never knew this about iRacing too, but they really take it serious. And if you go and wreck people, they throw you out just like it's a regular racetrack. I've had friends show me letters they got in the mail where they were suspended for like 2 months or something like that. Like, wow. Oh wow, they really do take it serious. So,
do they give you any leniency if you're new and trying to learn?
I don't know.
They have a whole grading system, which you know what, I should bring the setup down to the Matthews Family Studios one day, and we set it up and just kind of.
Actually, I've never done it, so I'd love to see that. Now, actually, do either of you have the butt kicker when you did it?
No, that's a TJ Graves thing only. Okay. So our 4-cylinder friend, he's the one who has the butt. So, Scott, if you're not familiar with it, it's actually like
it's a box with it's a big box of batteries in it, according to TJ.
it's the box that vibrates whenever you end up taking a hit or something to try to give you that 4-dimensional effect to it. It's pretty wild for what I've read.
You just can't help that, Scott.
Now that you've been involved in iRacing, do you think it helps short track racing, or do you think it hurts short track racing? And what I mean by that is, do you think a kid will get set up with iRacing stuff and like it and be like, all right, now I'm going to take my life savings, buy a race car and go racing? Or do you think it's the opposite effect where they say, why would I go buy a race car? I got everything right here. I can race every track in the country and never leave my bedroom. You know what I'm saying?
See, I would say that the first aspect of it a couple of years ago was that they would want to go out and buy their own race car. I mean, TJ Graves that's how he got started.
Right.
He began in, playing with iRacing. But now there is a push, and Josh, we talked about this before, and we'll probably mention very briefly about the Formula E car change that is coming. Mm-hmm. Formula E is introducing an artificially intelligence-only racing series, a robo-race series, while NASCAR is on the verge, according to Adam Stern of the Sports Business Journal, of announcing a more exclusive or a more in-depth iRacing league. They already have one, but they're going to have other series at the track where fans could compete in. So I think as we create more of a greater emphasis on virtual racing or virtual gaming as a whole, I think even ESPN and ESPN2 picked up virtual gaming franchises to broadcast and air, which is something that I never thought would be that big of a deal. I'm afraid as we begin to go down that path, Scott, that there would be less of a drive to go out and get the real car to drive and race, and more of an emphasis would be placed on the video game side of things, and that's a little bit scary to me.
I'm gonna say that I haven't tried it yet, and I'm very interested. So next time you come down, bring it, and just let me have
the whole thing.
But I can't imagine that it's the same thrill as being in a car and bouncing off of the guy next to you, or it can't be. it can't bring that same thrill to you.
But the big appeal with the iRacing over than what we do is if you do wreck, you hit
Don't
the
have
button.
to fix it.
Yeah, you hit the button, you hit restart, and you got a brand new car again. Where we got to work on the cars, you know.
Yeah, it has its advantages certainly, but I don't think it can entirely turn people off because I don't think there's anything quite like actually doing it.
Right.
And a little bit even the fear knowing that you can get injured or worse potentially.
Yeah, it's that's the one downside of it. But they do a lot of things to correlate it with the real world racing action, including the fact that they have an iRacing 24 Hours of Daytona, which, speaking of, we had the real 24 Hours of Daytona this past week, which is the unofficial kickoff to Speed Weeks, even though they take the week off to celebrate the Super Bowl. Josh, I know you're not a fan of that.
The what?
But that is a lot of storylines came out of that, one of which the Penske team struggled mightily on the sports car side of things. But Roger Penske stayed awake, the 80-year-old car owner, for all 24 hours straight on his pit box.
Oh.
That, to me, is the biggest storyline that came out of the Rolex 24. Not the Cadillac sweep of first and second, not the drive by Albuquerque, Barbosa, and Fittipaldi to the overall win. The fact that Roger Penske did not sleep for a minute over the 24-hour course of that race, to me, that's the greatest achievement that I've ever seen somebody have in racing.
There you go, folks. You heard about the 24 Hours of Daytona.
I mean, that was just there wasn't a lot that happened. It was, in fact, the race was so clean that they broke a record for laps and for miles in a 24-hour event. Obviously, the race was 24 hours in length. They didn't break a record in terms of time, but they ran the most laps ever, breaking a record that was set back in 1992. I believe it was in excess of over 800 laps that were turned by the overall winner, which was, in fact, the number 5 Cadillac driven by Albuquerque, Barbosa, and Christian Fittipaldi.
Any updates on the only time I really paid attention to the 24 hours race is when there's names that I know, such as like AJ Allmendinger. I try to pay attention to the NASCAR drivers involved in it. Maybe former NASCAR drivers like a Scott Pruitt or something. Any updates on guys like that?
AJ Allmendinger finished on the podium. He finished on the podium.
He was
said
leading
it was
for a while.
Right, but like all AJ Allmendinger races, he just never gets there at the end.
Oh, he pulled a Chase Elliott. I get it.
Right.
The end of Scott Pruitt's racing career in sports cars did not go the way which he had hoped, although he did have much success in the Rolex 24 over the last few years, and he will be taking a role with Lexus in a managerial position, but the results did not parlay into what they had hoped for in their respective class. And also, it should be noted that Chip Ganassi got the win in the GT Daytona ranks in the Fords, outlasting the Chevrolets, the Corvettes that were in the field, which are normally the cars to beat, and that was also the 200th race win for the Ganassi team as a whole in all of motorsports, which is a rather huge accomplishment as far as I'm concerned, especially when we talk about Roger Penske and Chip Ganassi usually in the same sentence. Also, Rick Hendrick could be up there as well. Remember, they got their 200th win with Jimmy Johnson a few years back on the Cup side. Rather impressive racing resume for Chip Ganassi with that 200th win in the Ford GT in the GT Daytona category. But yeah, Scott, I'm with you. The 24 Hours Daytona was lacking something for me. I don't know if it was NASCAR interest or maybe just such a disparity. They're trying to consolidate the classes, which I'm a fan of. I think sports car racing was better when it was just prototype and GT, and that was it. They had 2 prototype classes a year ago, 2 GT classes a year ago. They've consolidated it to 3 with a standard prototype class and a GT Daytona, a GT Le Mans. They got some more consolidation to do in order to make it a little more easier to understand for fans as far as I'm concerned. But the interest wasn't what it normally is. And maybe you're right. Maybe it was a lack of star power in terms of,
was AJ the only NASCAR Cup driver in the field?
Well, Montoya was former NASCAR, but Montoya was involved. I saw a few.
Austin Cindric.
Yes. Briscoe.
How about Justin Marks that we were talking about earlier? Was he racing anything there?
No.
I believe. I don't. I thought he was going to be in a GT Daytona car, but then he ended up going to climb Mount Everest or something like that, and now he's going to be in Daytona 500.
Well, it's
so.
funny you say that because there's got to be a reason why we've seen a decline in Cup drivers there, like a Kyle Larson or the Earnhardts or somebody like that.
I think it could be contract.
Do you think it's contract, or do you think they just feel like going to climb Mount Everest or snowboard somewhere else, that they're just enjoying their life elsewhere rather than going there?
Well, knowing people like Kyle Larson, people that want to race and they will drive anything. I mean, you drive all over to race. Ronnie Mullen will jump in just about anything. I think it's not so much the drivers because even if it loses some of the prestige or even the coverage, I think it's a lot of it is going to be the contracts, holding the back.
Yeah, but then again, you see Kyle Larson run sprint cars. Maybe they just rather not go road course racing and they'd rather go run their sprint car somewhere.
That or just limits on it. Or you're allowed to run X amount, and that one was going to be, that's more hours than anything else. So we're going to, depending on how they view it. I'm not exactly sure, but I mean, that would be my first thought, at least. But yeah, there are a handful of names. The coverage was overall pretty good, and thanks to the internet and having a Fire Stick and all that, I was able to use the Fox Sports Go app and watch much more of the 24 hours at Daytona than I normally would with just a cable subscription. And I mean, there was a lot of coverage on it, and that was good. But I can see that for a more casual fan, it could be kind of difficult to watch between the different classes. And I'm wondering, I don't think that they need separate streams because that would be far too taxing on everything to have announcers and cameras just to cover the prototypes in each class. But if they've done a lot to divide the divisions and have the tracker bar running at the top of the screen. But I'm wondering if there's any way to tweak that whole system to make it a little bit easier for casual fans to understand who's where versus. And I don't know why they bother with an overall, because it's always going to be a prototype unless they all blow up.
There was a year, I think it was 2003, that a GT Porsche ended up winning the overall. May have been the last time that was done. But you're right, Josh. I mean, since then, it seems like it's always going to be a prototype that comes out on top. And speaking of the sports car side of the world, Fernando Alonso announced he's going to run the World Endurance Championship along with the Formula One season, which is rather exciting. Mm-hmm. And it seems like that Alonso is trying to put himself in the category of some of the drivers like Foyt or Andretti and,
Gurney.
And Dan, I was just going to say, Sam, Dan Gurney, just for being one of the most versatile racers that you could find. Indy 500 start last year, Rolex 24-hour competition this year, running the full World Endurance Championship along with the Formula One season. And Jenna Fryer, who I don't give praise to often, put out a very nice story for the Associated Press stating that Alonso's humble nature and his approach to all these racing competitions is something that all major NASCAR drivers should learn from. There's a general appreciation from Alonso to be involved in these types of events, and it's really fun to watch on the outside. And Jeff Gluck agreed with Fryer's perspective that a lot of drivers who are in the NASCAR ranks should take some notes from Alonso's approach to this because it's very humbling and very appreciative. And I'm excited to see where it goes from here for him.
I think that's kind of a good thing to have, to be humble, but at the same time, outside of maybe an underdog where you want that nice guy, I think from the NASCAR end of things, a lot of the fan base wants some of that rough and Trump style of I'm going to come in and I'm going to make this better and do things my way aspect of it. So looking at your demographics, yes and no, as far as agreeing with that type of statement. That's my input on that. That's all. But speaking of 24-hour races, looks like Biffle is going to be involved with a 24 hours of race. Is that right, Sam?
Yeah.
The 24 hours of lemons, Josh.
Did he say what track that's going to be at?
Oh, hot diggity dang. I was not ready for this. That was just a joke. I did not mean. Give me a second. forget, Eric. Stall for me while I look.
Well,
for
I was
this.
going to say, fellow factory stock racer to Scott and I, Rob Longo is going to be going down to Alabama, it looks like, to run a 24 Hours of Lemons race. And they rented a ride, him and Rob Schultz, I believe. And I want to do that someday. And it's just a matter of, getting healthy and getting time. But I would love to run one of those. I kind of view it like an enduro, but less contact.
Right. Yeah, I talked to Mike Carpenter. He's a former modified driver at Wallstein. He's been running them too. He says he really, really likes them, but he doesn't travel far. And you look at their schedule; they run at some really cool racetracks. You know, if I was to do it, I would venture out, like you said. Rob's going to, or you'd say Alabama.
Yeah.
I mean, they have them in Texas and all over the place. And yeah, I mean, it's another form of racing that looks like fun.
And you get a lot of seat time. As long as you don't break, you get to have a lot of fun. Right. And apparently their pit parties and stuff are basically legendary.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a good time all weekend, and the penalties are the craziest thing too.
You gotta dance on the roof of your car. Mike Carpenter was telling me something happened, and the guy had to take the door off his car and go to a bar and sit in the bar with the door of his car next to him or something like that. It is really crazy. And supposedly if you take it too serious, they just make fun of you, you know what I'm saying? So it's definitely designed to be a good time, you know?
Yes, but they do take contact very seriously.
Yeah. They have weird roll cage rules because I looked into it too. I'm like, well, I'll just take my factory stock into it. The thing runs great, you know? And they don't want NASCAR style roll cages. They want more like the road race type roll cages. So that was one of the reasons I didn't look into it any further.
Well, another issue, Aaron Lineman, who was on our show a while back, he races with the Three Pedal Mafia team in the Lemons series, and he was saying actually the factory stocks would, at least in one way, be very terrible for Lemons because of fuel consumption and the amount of pit stops to refuel. And cost aside, because I was thinking the same thing. You know, well, I got a car. It's a race car. I mean, you know, brakes and tires will be an issue, and the setup is going to have to be wildly different. And he's like, no, you're going to use so much fuel. You need a fuel-efficient car out there. Like Miatas are good, of all things.
But there again, if you're just going to have fun, you know, put a 30-gallon fuel tank in the thing and go and run, go until it runs out, and then stop and fuel and keep going again. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. Now, I would love to do it, and if for me at least, I'd already have a car for it. But yeah, there's a lot to it, and it's I don't know. I want to do it one day. That's on my bucket list of things to do. As Eric's showing us his phone for some reason.
It's not what it looks like. Something else I want to touch on is doing his research. The longtime Melbourne Grand Prix promoter Ron Walker passed away this past week. Want to take a moment to think about him. Formula One test days are starting to be released. Just kind of put a bow on everything. As I know we spent the first half of the show talking about Cliff and all the things that he had to offer. So we're just trying to button up a lot of what we had planned throughout the week. And we'll get more into the American drivers not being ready for Formula One as the Formula One season continues to approach and as more people begin to talk about that. But with that, gentlemen, I said we roll right into what happened this past weekend in Atlantic City in what I thought was a spectacular weekend because I went home with $900 in the pocket. So I had a very good week in Atlantic City.
I didn't know you were selling your body again.
So that was Friday night.
You think you get $900?
What are you trying to say?
Got $250.
I agree. However, it was a great show. I did have I had a lot of fun going down there. I went down with my dad, and we got there just after. We got there on Saturday. Unfortunate news is that on Friday night, TQ driver Mike Teidebeck, who, I mean, he's raced at Wall a number of times, both with the TQ, both on the big track when they had the wings, and on the flat track on the interoval. A few years ago, on the big track, he got into a pretty severe accident, broke his back, tumbling down the backstretch. In AC on Friday night, he had another wreck. He went pretty hard into the wall. And they ended up having to extricate him from the car. He's unfortunately still in the hospital, last we heard. Sending our best wishes to him for recovery. It's just a very sad situation. I'm not sure if you guys have any input on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable. Obviously, you don't want to see this happen to anybody, ever. But it's like if you were to take the personality of some racers and you look at some of the situations they find themselves in, Mike is hands down one of the nicest guys you can meet in the pit area. And it sounds cliche, but it's really not, because he's a tremendous gentleman. He's a tremendous father, tremendous husband. And he never seems to put himself intentionally in a position to end up in a bad situation, and it always seems to have found him. And not really sure. I don't really have a good enough source on the subject matter. And his wife Renee Teideback put out a statement through RaceProWeekly.com, a website in which she served as the head photographer for quite some time. Just kind of politely asking the general public and all of Mike's friends and concerned loved ones to kind of bear with them as we kind of wait this out a little bit to see, how things are going to pan out for Mike. And Josh, as you mentioned, it's not the first time that Mike's been in a precarious position after an incident in a race car. And we're all thinking about him, and we love him dearly. And just hoping for that best possible outcome that could come from all this. And I guess this kind of poses an elephant in the room type of question that wasn't on our show sheet, but being that we have Scott in the room, I kind of want to ask this question. Indoor racing as a whole has seemed to take a bit of a dangerous turn over the last few seasons. Somebody told me, I believe, that the cars are now traveling about 2 seconds faster than what they did in 2003 or 2004, which was not that long ago. Is this just as unfortunate turn of events? I mean, Mike was not one of the only drivers to get injured on the weekend. There were a couple drivers who had to get extricated from their cars, who were all, home and recovering by now. But I'm starting to get a little bit of an uneasy feeling with some of these indoor shows and just how frequent it seems to be that we're seeing drivers get banged up. And I'm not sure if I'm not sure if you guys feel the same way, Scott. It's nobody wants to see this happen, and the indoor shows are beginning to become a bit of a common denominator for this type of stuff. And I'm curious if you feel the same way.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't know much about TQs. I mean, I'm good friends with Jimmy Blewett, and I've been in his garage, and I looked over Jimmy's TQs. Pretty good. He's got beautiful equipment, and Jimmy, after the passing of his brother, he really looks into safety in his cars, and I look in his TQ car, and it looks safe to me. I know a lot of guys, not everybody uses a full containment seat in the TQs because you're limited to space in them. Maybe they should go with something where you have to. Maybe they should add a bar maybe to the roof or something. Maybe raise the roofs up a little bit higher. I really don't know much about TQ racing and the indoor racing itself, but I agree with you. It has seemed to get more and more dangerous, but I really don't have an answer on how to fix it because I really don't know much about it.
I would like to raise the diameter of the roll cage tubing on them a little bit personally. I know that they're allowed. I think it's a half-inch thinner than what we run for the factory stocks, and it could be a weight thing. It could be just because the cars are lighter. That in theory you would need less strength in the bars, but who cares? As long as everybody's running the same thing. Granted, this would have to go nationwide, actually more than nationwide, because you have people from Canada coming down to race in Atlantic City and keep things, you want to keep things even. But if that's what it means to protect the drivers and, save a life, why not? Is kind of my
and like
opinion.
you're saying, they make them with smaller tubing, to save weight and everything like that. But if everybody has to run it, then everybody has the same weight. So just,
Exactly.
Make them safer. I know just open wheel racing in general on a tight track like that, you can hop a wheel so easy and go airborne, and then they're hitting walls pretty fast. It's part of it. I mean, they know it when they strap into the car. It's dangerous,
Is there any way to widen the bumpers on them? the Nerf bar. I mean, across the front and the rear.
Yeah.
I know. There's worry about them caving in, rubbing the tire and all that. But if you made a strut, from the side Nerf bars forward or something like that to prevent them from caving in, I mean, you could, in theory, limit some of the launching that
Right.
happens. Maybe the walls need to be adjusted slightly. On the track itself. Maybe we need to get rid of the Coke syrup and let them slide.
Yeah, like I said, first few years I went down to the indoor racing. It's really not my cup of tea. I mean, like I said, I will watch any type of racing. I will watch indoor racing, but every lap is caution after caution after caution, and it turned me off from it a little bit. So I kind of stopped paying attention to what goes down there.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to congratulate Ryan Flores for winning. A real quick Jimmy Blewett story. Jimmy and Ryan are pretty much teammates in it.
Mm-hmm.
And Jimmy didn't race the first couple once he went to help Ryan. Part of winning the championships at Wall Stadium this year, me and Jimmy got invited to EMPA, which is Eastern Motorsports Press Association championship dinner. Me and Jimmy rode out there together in my truck. It was about a 2.5 hour ride, so we had some time to talk. And the whole time, Jimmy was talking about Ryan, getting him faster. Ryan had motor blow up in Allentown, and Jimmy's going to his engine guy. He's going to get him more horsepower. He's going to get him this. So in the back of my mind is Jimmy's not racing indoor racing. You know what I'm saying? He didn't go the first couple months. He's worried about making Ryan's car faster. And so on the ride home, I said, Jimmy, so you're not racing Atlantic City this year? He's like, no, I'm racing. Why do you think I'm not racing? I said, because the whole time you're telling me how you're going to make Ryan faster, Ryan faster, Ryan faster. He's like, he said something to me that was pretty cool. He says, Scott, when one of us win, we all win. And I thought that was pretty cool. And he went down there and finished second to Ryan.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I know we're talking about safety, and I'm getting off the safety thing a little bit. But Jimmy knows going into it, he's a little bit heavier than a guy like Ryan. And he's given up a little bit. But, Jimmy did great. I think he won his qualifying race, and he finished second to Ryan. I just thought it was cool that Jimmy went out on a limb to help Ryan like that. And, and Ryan's doing great with it. And, I mean, I hope he keeps continuing. I know people are getting hurt, but on the other side, it is a good race too. So I don't know. What can you do? People get hurt in race cars, and it's part of it.
There's always some danger, unfortunately. And it's one of those things that each accident you learn. You learn so much more from a failure than you do from a success. If everything went right, then you don't change anything.
Right.
But when it goes wrong, you find out what went wrong, where it went wrong, why it went wrong, and you can try to attack those areas. I mean, you look at Kyle Busch breaking his legs, at Daytona. Like, well, a car will never hit there, and he found a way to hit it, and now, it's being addressed or been addressed, and maybe that's just what's going to happen. That's going to be the natural progression of things. The cautions, luckily, and we've had a number of Wall Stadium track crew guys that have been working the Atlantic City or the indoor events, and they've brought their skills to make those cleanups and corrections go faster. So overall, the event runs a lot smoother. The holdup this year, I believe, was 2 people having to be extricated from their cars on Saturday night, and that took some time. But it's for safety. It's trying to do things the right way. So I don't have any complaints there. The only thing that I would really eliminate is the driver introductions, which that took up 20 minutes that didn't need to be wasted there, because you've been watching them race in heat races and consies all night. I don't need to hear them be introduced again. Basically,
the introductory part doesn't bother me. It's the fact that they walk in and they have to have their picture taken with Miss Motorsport, which Scott, I know that you went through a lot to try to determine what Miss Motorsport is, and she's a beautiful woman, and I'm sure she's incredibly talented. But I don't think the 24th starter has to get an individual picture with her. I mean, that's for the race winner. Let's save it for the race winner. Let's make it a prized possession for the guy who comes home in first place or the girl who comes home in first place.
If you finish 24th, you still want a picture with Miss Motorsport. So why are you being a butt?
I'm not
Yeah.
even in the field, and I want a picture with Miss Motorsports, but that's besides the point. As Scott mentioned, Ryan Flores got the win in the TQ side. Brett Beaver got the win in the slingshot competition, and Cale Ross made a late race pass.
That's a
for the
great
champ
racing
car.
name. Brett
Is
Beaver.
that Beaver
All right.
time or whatever it's called? What was he saying? The announcer, Beaver Dam,
Beaver Fever?
Weaver, Beaver Fever.
I don't know. I'm just
Yeah.
guessing. I couldn't understand a thing that the announcer was saying down there. I think he was kind of monster jamming it and talking so loud into the mic that it just got distorted. And yeah,
At least,
I kind of just tuned
At
it
least, yeah. Well, I was gonna say, at least he didn't call him a believer, because I would have that limit. Okay.
out. Now, as far as the racing, overall the show was pretty good. My favorite is the slingshots. Okay, I think that's the best event of the night. Unfortunately, they kind of started out like a sportsman race, and they couldn't get a lap in, and that was a bit frustrating to me. But they ended up being a great show after that. Now, that said, I do want to say that the champ carts they ran like from the green flag 17 laps, no problem. There were some good battles. It was great racing. Then eventually somebody got together. They spun. It happens. It's indoors, but 17 laps, clean, no problem. And then they put them to single file. And that was the champ carts. And the TQs, when it was their turn, they wrecked and wrecked and wrecked and wrecked, and they kept keeping them double file. And I just think that's unfair. You should be putting, the TQs are fast, and I enjoyed watching, but similar to the modifieds, they weren't the best show or the best division to watch. And just because they're the fastest and the most prestigious and all that, they get all this favoritism. And when you could have a slingshot consi or something in part of the main show instead of having it 11 in the morning or whatever time it was. I just think that they're not catering to, especially if you want to bill it as a family event and, a dad's bringing his son there or whatever, and not trying to make this sexist, but you make it family, bring the kids there. Shut up, Sam. And
starting to sound like me a little bit.
I did. I had an Eric Brennan moment there. But you want to have this like, oh, do you remember when that car did this or whatever? And you're highlighting the most single file part of the show when it actually comes down to racing or the biggest slowdown, which is all the TQ spins. To me, it's a little frustrating. I mean, I had a good time. I hope the event continues. The crowd was decent. I've seen better, but it was decent. I had a good time. I don't know. That's all I can say on that.
Well, to tie things together to what Josh is saying, shout out to our very own Neil III, who gave it a good go to try to get into the race. Tyler Truex, who charged through the field in the
What did he start, like 17th?
event. Yeah, he got, I don't know how he got up there, but he got up there. Nick Shaw had a solid run going until he got tangled up in a late race crash. We also talked about Ryan Flores and Jimmy Blewett carrying the banner on what turned out to be a very unfortunate night for the Wall Stadium Speedway family. And just another indoor season just about in the books. They have one more race to go on the weekend of February 9th, 10th, and 11th.
Albany. Scott's going to take us all up there, right?
Yes.
I'll be in Florida racing.
And that will conclude the indoor portion of the 2017 and 18 season. So, gentlemen, I don't know if everybody has anything more to add.
Well, I just want to say I think it's time for what have we learned today, and I'm going to start with Eric.
I learned that apparently I made my $900 in Atlantic City by selling my body. So I didn't know that.
You got Cosby too?
Yeah, I Cosby'd myself.
Scott, what have you learned?
Oh, I learned I don't have to rush here to be on time.
Sorry, Scott. I'm sorry. Sorry, I will make it up to you.
Oh man, Sam, what have you learned?
I've learned that I have to go easy on Scott and not show him my spreadsheet. Google Doc.
Real quick before we sign off, you mentioned that one driver's name. What was it? Brent Beaver or something?
He just remembers the Beaver part.
There has been some cool names in racing. Zane Zeiner's one that sticks out in my mind. From a kid, I was a huge modified fan, still am. Southern modified driver was Melvin Puddin Swisher. What names sticking in your guys' mind when it comes to like racing names?
I mean, I always thought that Lake Speed was a joke.
Lake Speed's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah, Scott
Speed
too.
Scott Speed. Yeah, that's a good one.
Buckshot
Sterling
Jones.
Marlin, I thought
was
was
good.
always weird. Yeah, Buckshot Jones.
You can't get more redneck than that, right?
I was so disappointed to learn that Buckshot was a nickname. His first name is Roy. It was Roy Jones, and his grandfather said he was tough as Buckshot, and then he just ran with it for the rest of his career. But that was another one. So,
sounds like a Southerner STD.
There was an IndyCar driver named Salt Walther, I believe, who raced in the Indy 500 in the 70s. That was another one that stuck out to me. So there's a couple.
For some reason, I always laugh when I hear Will Power's name too.
Yeah.
Like Will Power, he willpowered his way into a win. You know,
He had to have some conceited parents or something.
I listened to an interview the other day about it was actually Wendell Scott's son, Wendell Scott Jr. Was talking about Bubba Wallace racing and being an African American in the Cup Series. He said he'd like to see drop the Bubba name and use his name Darrell Wallace. How do you guys feel about that?
Bubba's kind of fun.
I always operated under the notion of and Scott, I remember this when I first started calling Neats Enduro races at Wall in 2012. Where we had drivers like by the name of like Animal or Mayhem, Mike Parisi, or it's like I always thought it sounded more professional and more serious business if you use their actual name. It's I don't know why. I don't know if it's because I think I take racing too seriously sometimes.
Well, that's exactly what Wendell Scott Jr. was saying. He was saying for Bubba Wallace to be taken serious and representing the African Americans, he would rather see him drop the Bubba name because it's kind of like an old Southern name, and he would like to see him use his real name, Darrell. I don't know. But then again, I think Bubba, maybe for a kid watching, he'll notice
it's
that name.
easier to say,
yeah,
too.
right. But I don't.
And I mean, motocross star James Stewart for a while was known as James Bubba Stewart.
Right.
And they kind of blended the two of them together. And
but what about Jeff Bodine going to Jeffrey?
Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, really? Why?
Well, that was probably to make him feel a little bit younger because Jeffrey came in the later years of his racing career.
Jeffrey was actually his real name, and he wanted to go back to it. But I think that was just an attention thing,
Well, it was also that one year that Jimmy Johnson ran a truck series race. It was either 08 or 09. And instead of putting Jimmy Johnson above the door of the truck, he put Jim Johnson to give himself a little bit of an alter ego. So, I mean,
Randy Moss.
Rowdy. Exactly. He said
2008.
Yep. And, to me, if the driver's okay with it, if they don't mind what they're being labeled or called, they run with it. It's all in the name of fun. And if you're that confident in yourself, they're going to give yourself a nickname, or you're going to run with the nickname that was given to you, then so be it.
I
but
think it
for
should
me
be,
personally,
it should be whatever you get, whatever gets you talked about more. Because
exactly.
You want the notoriety to again, that staying power that I was talking about earlier.
But you don't think that's too gimmicky? I mean, I like to get talked about for winning races and championships, not because I got a corny name, what I'm saying?
Do you want me to say, Scotty, I need more power? Or something?
I remember, when Buckshot Jones first arrived on the scene, to me, he was always Buckshot Jones. I didn't know anything more than that. I remember Darrell Wallace Jr. when he first started racing Bandoleros at Charlotte. I remember seeing him on the Speed Channel coverage of the 600 Racing Summer Shootout Series as Darrell Wallace Jr. So for that reason, if I was him, I wouldn't shy away from it. Just for the purpose of being proud of your identity and where you came from, and that's how it all began for him. It's like Joey Logano. When he won his first Hooters Pro Cup race in 2005 at Mansfield at the age of 15. He was Joey Logano. If he changed it to Joe or Joseph, it just wouldn't feel natural to me because that's not how I've always known him as.
So
and for
you're going to start
Jr.
calling Lewis Hamilton Chocolate Thunder or something.
So, no, I would not go that far. No. That's how I made my money this weekend, though.
Oh, no.
That's right. I went there. So.
Okay.
All right, folks.
What an idiot.
It's getting late. I stayed at a very shady hotel in Atlantic City this weekend, so that may or may not be a true story.
Oh, man.
Josh, what did you learn?
Well, I'm going to go back a little bit to the live show back at Motorsports. I was going to say I learned that Nick met the one. I also learned that Neil likes his women going around, not straight. I learned that Darianne can't get it off fast enough.
Oh my God. Scott is very uncomfortable right now.
I'm fine. I'm fine.
And today I mostly learned, and I think we all did, that Eric would be late for anything and everything.
Unless it was a really important race. That I would not miss.
We'll see about Daytona.
You know, Scott, I got a friend who's getting married, and he doesn't listen to the podcast, so I can just come out and say this. He picked the same day of the Indy 500. I'm not going. But now I have another friend who I'm even closer to who's getting married the same day for the Indy 500 in 2 years. And I told him if it was anybody else, I would totally bail on his wedding, and I have to go. And it's breaking my heart. Have you ever been in that position? You seem to be as big of a phrase fan as I am. Have you ever been in that position?
You know, we were mentioning, John Blewett III before. He actually got married, and there was a race on TV. It was like the Atlanta race or something. It was the last Cup race of the year back then. And the whole time the reception was going on, we were all in the bar part watching, including him. We were all in the bar part watching the Cup race on TV while the girls were all in the reception part. So John Gasco did a great job this year. He got married and he made sure it was.
Well, you and Nancy kind of planned your wedding outside of the racing schedule.
And the problem with that was, back to John Gasco, he did a great job planning his wedding where there was no races on TV, and it worked out great. Mine was actually the week after the last race, but that is also the rain date.
Yes.
And I was leading the championship points, and when we woke up that Saturday morning to go to the track, it was raining. So
I remember this.
We were nail biting a little bit. If it was going to rain out or not, so it started getting where it was around 1 o'clock and it was still raining. I'm like, they might be calling this. I said, Nance, I might have to jet out of the wedding. And we actually got to the point where we were figuring out when I could skip out to make the race. We were already calling people who was going to bring my car to the track, who was going to have it ready for me, who was going to be there with a cell phone, call me saying the feature's getting ready to roll out, because I didn't have to win the race. I just had to finish top 10. So I wasn't going to go and practice. I wasn't going to go and run the heat race. I was just going to show up for the feature. We were actually planning this all out, where I was going to leave my own wedding, because we, in the back of my mind, I grew up in Farmingdale, but we did have the wedding reception right in Howe, only 10 minutes from the track. Yeah. So we were starting to plan on me skipping out on my own wedding to go win the championship. Luckily, we raced that night and we didn't have to do it. But I mean,
that's dedication. Yeah, that's what it takes.
You guys are my people. Like, I feel at home when I'm with you guys.
Yeah,
like, nobody else gets it.
Weddings and racing always gets confusing. When I was a kid, Kip Muha was a street stock racer. He actually got married right at the racetrack, right on the front straightaway. You can ask Jeff Gravatt. I think he married him right on the front straightaway at the racetrack. So I've seen it all at racetracks.
That's awesome.
My folks met at Wall Stadium.
Really?
Was your dad running that night, or?
Yeah, their engagement pictures at the pits at Wall Stadium. My dad has this big Cadillac Sam shirt on with the hat and everything.
Oh my God.
Meanwhile,
I'm sorry I'm disappointing you guys.
Eric, are you going to Albany for the indoor races?
Kevin Ayers gave me an offer that I may not be able to refuse, but I'm not sure if it's going to come to fruition yet. So I'm on the fence about it.
Yeah. Kevin's the race director for that. He'd be a good, Kevin Ayers does all the race directing for the indoor races. He'd be a great guy to get on the show and ask him about the injuries at the and the indoor racing and what can be done. He'd probably be a little more educated about it than us.
I agree.
Scott, question: Are you up to trying to do these podcasts with us more often?
Yeah, I mean,
if you show up on time.
I don't know if I can keep doing it at 12:30 at night, but yeah, no, I definitely want to keep coming doing them. Nancy's still interested in coming. Maybe if there's nights where I have to work on the race cars, I can send her in my place. But yeah, no, I really enjoy doing it. Like I said, I love talking racing. I'm good at talking racing. I know racing. I've been involved in it all my life. And I was also telling Eric that I know this is a podcast, but I'm also in the radio. I'm a truck driver. I've been a truck driver since I turned 21. I listen to radio all day, and I enjoy it. I'm a huge Howard Stern fan. with satellite radio now, I listen to NASCAR all day long. Dave Moody, Chocolate Myers, all those guys. I love listening to them. So yeah, this is right up my alley. I really enjoy doing it with you
But now
guys.
think about it, Scott. You have a solid 3 hours to listen to this right now.
Yeah, that's fine. You
right,
know what?
so-
And I do listen to you guys on the podcast.
Here it comes.
I was searching for the Motorsports ones for all week, but they never showed up yet. But no, there is times in my truck that I'm driving out towing, and Josh, I'll get the notification that Josh had put up a new podcast, and I'll turn the radio off in my truck, the satellite radio, and listen to the podcast on my phone. It works really well.
Good. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, now it'll be
Well, we
different with you
appreciate it.
on it.
Now it's gonna be weird to listen to myself. I definitely enjoy doing the podcast, and I can try to come next Tuesday. If for some reason I can't make it because we're getting ready to go to Florida, I can send Nancy, and I definitely want to do the River Rock for the Daytona 500 party.
Well, you're more than welcome anytime.
All right.
Scott,
I'll
we'd
put
love
you
to
in an
make you part of
intro.
the team.
The intro,
we'll give him
obviously.
an intro
The funny, when you play Neil Rutt's intro, I die laughing every time. The Munchkin thing or whatever it is. So it's funny you say that. I'm like, you know what? If I come full time with these guys, I'm going to need an intro. So when I was driving down here on time, when I was rushing here to get on time, I was thinking what I like my intro to be, and I was thinking maybe something from Six Pack, like Swifty, or
All right.
I'll find a couple funny lines from the movie.
See, they don't get to pick. I do
Oh,
it.
you
Yeah.
pick it. All right. But
It's
yeah.
usually
my
I
God.
find a fault with Eric. There are many, and we build off of that.
What exactly
Scott.
is the Neil Rutt intro saying? I know it's the what's it, the
We wish to
Wizard-
welcome you to Munchkin Land.
is that from Wizard of Oz, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Wizard
yeah.
of Oz. Yeah. It's a funny one. And,
Scott, you're
and,
hired.
and the funny part about it, while it's playing, I watch Neil Rutt sitting in the corner and he's dying laughing. That even makes it even more funny,
He wasn't expecting it. It's fun.
Scott, you're hired. We need you. We love to have you. Nick and Neil have had a lot of stuff going on that keeps them away from us. You're the guy.
All right,
You're
great. Yeah, but
And I
if
promise I'll
Neil wants to
never be
come
this
and do
late
it, I'd
again.
love to do it with Neil also. Or if I can't
Oh,
make
yeah.
it, if Neil wants to do it, I'm fine with that too.
um,
What did happen to Neil in the indoor thing? I seen some guy had something on his car
I
saying
didn't
got
get
heart
to see
winged or
it.
something
Yeah.
like that.
I didn't get to see what actually happened, but I guess they're saying that he bumped them and ran them into the wall or something like that. He's saying that he never touched them. I don't know. I have no real input because I didn't get to witness it. So,
But going back to the indoor racing, I know it's a TQ midget. That's the main division. I think the Slingshot's put on the best show down there. I
Yeah.
think
they had a rough start
yeah.
on Saturday night, but once they got going, man. All right, the TQs can. I mean, once you're on the outside, you're done, and you got to wait for a spot to fall back in. We know what that's like. The Slingshots were going 3 wide.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The size of the track and the scale of the Slingshot car, I think it's a perfect fit. I really do. I remember going down there and watching it. It feels like you're watching a dirt modified race somewhere because that's what it looks like on the track.
yeah.
I like the Slingshots, and I think what Paul Hartwick does with having numerous Slingshots and bringing them down there, I think he's got a good thing going.
Yeah, I agree. I know not everybody loves him, but I mean, I think he's bringing cars. He's putting on a show. And Tyler Truex is part of the team, and we saw where he was able to finish. With third, right?
I think third or fourth.
I believe it was
can't
third.
Remember.
But coming back from way back in the field, and he was doing it clean too. I mean, there's rubbing, and he wasn't just slamming people out of the way. So I mean, it was a hell of a show, and he was running on the outside pretty damn well too.
The only thing I don't like about the indoor racing is all these guys buy all this indoor stuff, and they only do it indoors. I wish they would do it in the summer too. Like I talked to
They
Nick
would
Shaw.
work well on the flat track. At the wall even.
I even talked to Nick Shaw a little bit about it. I said, Nick, now that the Barney sold the Sportsman car, what are your plans on racing this year? And Nick's like, I don't know, man. I'm thinking about getting a factory stock. Maybe I'll come race with you guys. I'm really not sure what I'm doing. I'm like, Nick, you have a Slingshot. Why don't you go out to like Linda's or Kutztown or Mahoney Valley or something like that where they run it? I would run your indoor car in the outdoors, in the summer months. And he's like, I never even thought about that. I'm like, you own it already. You already have it. And it'll get you better for when you do run it indoors. He's like, maybe I will try different races. So hopefully he does,
I hope so. I want to see more of those in action. We actually we talked to a number driver. We're gonna have more and more guests on and things like that and coming up. This week obviously has been a bit hard on all of us. So the show is just gonna get bigger and better as we move forward. On that, we're approaching 2 hours now of actual showtime.
Well, been here 4.
And Nancy, I'm sorry too. All right, I'm sorry. And Lisa and whoever Sam's significant other is right now, like that Jimmy Johnson posted behind them.
Sam's girl of the week.
So sorry. I'm a jerk. And with that, hopefully we made up for the lost week last week. And on a more serious note, we want to let the world know once again that our heart is with the Krause family and the Titeback family in this difficult time. And we're hoping for the best possible outcome in the Mike Titeback situation. We'll continue to keep you posted. And again, we hope to see many of you on Thursday, which, depending on when you're listening to this podcast, it's now 12:38 a.m. on the East Coast on Wednesday. So we hope to see you all February 1st in Homedale. Information will be posted on the RPM Podcast Facebook page or at therpmpodcast.com. And on a more lighter note, as Scott Riggleman mentioned, the deal is now inked. We will, in fact, be at River Rock in Brick, New Jersey for our Daytona 500 party on February 18th. And we hope to see you all there as the festivities will kick off at 12 noon. With that, on behalf of Sam Ballard Jr., Josh Matthews, Scott Riggleman, our newfound RPM podcast family member, I'm Eric Brennan, and we want to wish you all a fantastic week. We know it's been a rough one, but we hope to come back better than ever next week as we will continue to move forward. All of this, of course, is in loving memory of our friend, Cliff Krause, and we want to wish you all a fantastic evening. Good night, everybody.